can't avoid, people working these shifts because that's just the nature of the job, right? They're out there protecting us while we're all sleeping.
Sorry to interrupt, but that does beg a question. Is there any data to inform people should try to have a certain amount of time off of shift work, and if you hit a certain threshold, it has a protective effect? Or what if people could modify some things? Is there something for them to steer toward? One of my best childhood friends is a police officer, and he's always talking about, well, if I take this different role, I go to the bottom of the ladder, which means I have the worst schedule. But
Right.
after 6 months to a year, I have more control over my schedule. So it seems that there's some sort of oscillation and control over the sleep.
Yeah.
With that backdrop in mind, is there something people should be like trying to steer toward in terms of a minimal balance of normal versus shift work?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite variable. So it's interesting. It's quite variable across departments as to what they're doing. Some will have, either 24 on and then off, or some will have 48 on and then a number of days off. Some in maybe less busy places will have even a 72 or sometimes 96 on. Some of that goes out the window, however, because these departments are really understaffed. And so they're doing a lot of overtime, and they get basically, it's not uncommon for them to be post shift and about to go home and be like, oh, sorry, actually, we need you to stay for longer. And that also stacks onto the trauma and the stress and the PTSD side when you have that expectation. One of the things that we worked on with them, and this was actually the feedback we got, was it was one of the most helpful interventions, was kind of like, so your point is good about what's that shift structure look like? And there are groups who are working on that, but it's a pretty slow
Probably
process.
hard to answer.
Yeah, because again, the understaffing is really difficult, and so they just don't have a lot of flexibility. It's becoming increasingly difficult to hire for these positions as well, especially on the police side, which is really difficult. Puts the officers in such a higher stress state. But one thing that we did was we looked at, sort of thinking about what are all the things that you and I might tell a patient with regards to sleep hygiene, right? So we talked about the morning light exposure, getting outside, but having your last meal not too late, not drinking a bunch of water, decreased exposure to artificial light, not doing anything stressful, trying to get a wind down, trying to get in bed at a regular time each night, et cetera. Sort of go through the list of different interventions. Bedroom is for sleep and sex only, and dark and cool, and all these things. But we kind of looked at what does it look like for them when they are post call, and it gave them sort of a fork in the road of let's say you had a really busy shift and you didn't get much sleep at all, and you're basically going to go home and sleep. And so we gave them this whole list of things to do, which is basically, if you need a short nap before you go home, get that. Put on your blue blocking glasses when you're driving home, so trying to suppress natural light exposure. Sure. Safely get home. If you need a small meal, make it small, hydrate yourself, and then go to sleep. And sleep, for as long as you need to, as long as you can. When you wake up, you basically, think about, this is a reset day. I'm not going to push myself. I'm not going to do anything stressful. I'm not going to drink any alcohol. I'm not going to eat any sugar. You're going to basically do all the things that you can do to lower the load on your organism overall, and get to bed at a decent time. And then the next day, or the day 2 days later, are maybe quote normal days where you have a little bit more fun, a little more flexibility. And then your pre-call day is similar. You go into this sort of more intensive, aggressive reset mode where you're prepping actively for this shift, right? You avoid the sugar, you don't over exercise, you maybe do a little bit more mindfulness and stress management, exercises, et cetera. And the feedback that we got from that was super interesting, because they just said that was really, really helpful, right? Gave them some really concrete steps to do. It helped them get adequate rest, helped them understand that, while they're feeling a bit stuck in terms of I have to work these shifts, they actually have some agency now and some, control. They can take charge of it a little bit. And I think that piece was really, really valuable for us as well, for them.
Awesome. Yeah. So just the foundational aspects, nothing, super fancy.
Nothing super fancy, but structuring it in a certain way. Also doing you get home and we have them do a 10 or 15 minute heart math biofeedback session or a breathwork session. Again, you and I know this, but the more times you take that activated nervous system and you bring it back down towards a more reset state, the more it knows that space, and the quicker it can get there, and the more robustly it can stay there.